So welcome everybody to this week's Military Office Hours. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us. In the spirit of community mentorship and learning, I'm going to be co-hosting today. David is on PTO, well-deserved. Just a little bit of background on myself. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a director of customer success at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. So each week, we invite co-host or co-host. This week, we're honored we have multiple co-hosts to take part in our conversation so that we can leverage their experience, their expertise, and their unique perspectives. So the focus for tonight is exploring careers with Slack. So if you're ever wonder what it's like working for Slack, our company, we have some good folks that are going to give us an insight into their experience and how they came about. For those of you that attend weekly, we won't have a session in the next 2 weeks. We're going to go on a summer hiatus, a well-deserved summer hiatus. For those of you that don't know, we have a group of folks who help us put together these sessions. So it's not just David and myself. There are actually several other folks who volunteer, both from the ecosystem and internally at Salesforce, put this together, and also our media channel. So I just wanted you to know that we are going to step away for a couple of weeks just to enjoy summer. So you'll probably see some posts on LinkedIn and Twitter about that. So just want to give you a heads up that that's going on. So let me move over to the more important part about today. And again, let's introduce you to our co-hosts. So I'm going to say a little bit about them, and I'm going to allow them to share a little bit about themselves. So we have Frank Hesson, Jaclyn Figueroa, and Rebecca Cormier. Frank is a 26-year veteran in the U.S. Coast Guard. Thank you for your service, Frank. After retiring from service, he worked at Microsoft for over a decade before moving over to Slack. He is currently an account executive working with solution engineers to provide an innovative Slack solutions for both the U.S. Navy and United States Marine Corps as his customers. Secondly, we have Jaclyn, who has worked within the Salesforce ecosystem for over 7 years. She began her cloud computer career as a Salesforce administrator, and I know some of you are working on that certification and working on your career as an admin. So before moving on to consulting, she was a solutions consultant for Salesforce for a year and a half before joining Slack, and she is now a solutions engineer as of May of this year. And third, but definitely not last, or I should say the best, is Rebecca. She began her professional career in the legal and paralegal realm before moving on to the public sector consulting. From there, she worked as an account executive, a business development manager, a regional sales manager, before joining Slack as a solutions engineer. So I'm going to turn the mic over to all three of you. Frank, if you don't mind, we'll start with you, and then we'll move on to Jaclyn and Rebecca.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for the opportunity. It's great to be here. As Leo said, I'm Frank Hesson. I've been in IT for most of my professional life, even in the Coast Guard. I started out as a communicator, and I was a radioman. Actually, I was an enlisted guy first, and what they consider a Mustang, because I moved into the officer ranks. But I found early on that communications was great, but it was kind of boring after a while. So you learn how to do that stuff, and I really wanted something a little bit more challenging. So I shifted over to IT back in the early days, and I've been in it ever since. I think probably since the 90s, I've been in IT, and that it set me up for everything that I'm doing today. I went through the ranks, like I said, in the Coast Guard, regional system manager, all the way up to the network operations officer for Coast Guard headquarters, and then I'm the lieutenant in charge of all services for the fleet for the Coast Guard, the entire place before I left. And then I left there and came to Microsoft for almost 15 years. And in Microsoft, I started out as a director. I started as a program manager for the Department of Homeland Security. It was an easy fit from Coast Guard because DHS was our parent agency. So I moved into Homeland Security, and then I was supporting several of the agencies there with professional services. So I managed a group of team members there. And then from there, I moved into management. I became a director for the Department of Justice and the Department of Energy, and where I oversaw 6 managers and about 80 different consultants and premier field engineers. It's kind of exciting, but man, did I realize how much I don't like management. So I made a complete pivot. I left my director role and I went over to what we called the STU, which was the sales technical unit. And I went into selling SQL Server to the Navy. And, soon after that, the cloud boom hit. And so I started selling Azure. And then I got tired of doing that and I left. And I just said, I'm done for a little bit. And then I joined Slack. A friend of mine who is my manager today, Mark Tropia, called me up and he said, "What do you think you're doing?" I said, "Well, I'm retiring." He said, "No, the Navy needs you. Come on over." So he called me over to Slack. I joined the company. It's been great. So I've met a lot of great people. Two of them you'll meet here in a moment. But great experience, and I've really enjoyed it so far. Part-time world. You can see in the back there's crosses and whatnot. I'm a permanent deacon for the Catholic Church in my spare time.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you have a wealth of knowledge that we're going to learn more about as we continue today's session. Thank you for that intro. Becca, do you mind going next?
Sure. Thank you, Leo. Yeah, I am a solution engineer at Slack. I've been here for about a year. It'll be a year at the end of the month. I have, as you heard earlier, had a sort of a wide range of jobs. Started out as a legal administrator / paralegal for about 7 years, working for a county for local government in Texas, and really wanted to do sales. So for those of you that, may not have a strong sales background, but you're interested in getting into something like that, I might be the person to talk to, because I had absolutely no experience when I got my first sales job. It was pre-sales as a solution engineer for a company that serves government, or that helps government, both state, local, and federal. But I really still wanted to be an account executive. So I worked my way up into that role. And once I got there, kind of like Frank was saying about management, I did it for between 5 and 7 years and started to realize I really liked digging into the solution, doing the demos. I missed that aspect. So I'm now back as a solutions engineer. I've been working with the federal government, with Frank helping with the Navy. I've been helping some of the AEs with the National Guard, the Marines, the Air Force, and it has been one of the more rewarding jobs I've ever had. So I'm excited to be here. And if there's any way I can answer those questions about, how to transition into roles that you may not have any experience in and things like that, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that intro. And Jaclyn, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone. Super excited to be here. So I am a solution engineer, a new one here at Slack. So I joined in May. And prior to taking this role, so I'm going to go back about 7 years, I actually came from a non-traditional background. I graduated from college, majored in marketing, went through a series of jobs I did not want in retail. And I really just used the power of my network to get a job as a junior as system administrator for a Center of Excellence team at Hesson Corporation. And I was there for about 2 years, where I was really just able to build upon those foundational technical skills. And what I reached a point where I really just got bored with what I was doing. I realized, in order to keep on expanding my technical skill set, really learn, the wealth of different Salesforce products that were out there, I did some research and started looking into consulting roles, and I felt that that was the best next option for me. So I moved on over to consulting. I worked for Acumen Solutions, which was also acquired by Salesforce just last year. And this is what led me to the mothership, to Salesforce. I knew it was always a dream of mine to come to Salesforce. And so I was lucky enough to, just be able to jump on that. And I had the opportunity to work on various projects, helping our government customers. I've worked closely with the Coast Guard, with FEMA, and I've had the privilege of taking on various roles, from project management to being a solution architect. And what I really learned from being able to serve in all those roles was I really enjoyed being in front of our customers and helping them realize, the value and the investments that they just made. And I wanted a role where I could really practice product evangelism and having used Slack internally within Salesforce, I personally love Slack. I see the value that we can really bring to our customers. And I decided to apply for an internal role as a solution engineer. And I've only been here for 3 months, but it has been one of the best experiences so far. Outside of my job and work, like I've personally worked with people within my circle and friends of friends to help them transition into the tech industry. So I'm just really happy to be here and be able to provide, any answers to any questions that you have, just because I am passionate about people, coming from non-traditional backgrounds and moving into this amazing space that we're in. So really happy to be here.
Thank you, Jaclyn, and thank you, Rebecca and Frank. For those of you joining for the first time, let me just give you briefly the description of the purpose of these office hours. These are informal get-togethers for gathering with military trailblazers and our allies. So you don't have to be a military trailblazer to participate. The goal here is for us to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. So for the next 45 minutes, our intent and the opportunity here is for us to collaborate. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up, to help answer questions, to add your own perspective. I think that's what really brings the value of this community, is that we have a lot of folks that want to add on if you have a perspective on any of these themes that we're going to talk about. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat window to see questions there. Also, if you want to share your LinkedIn profile or your link to your profile on the chat window, please do so. Our session is to be inclusive, for us to learn, to network, and get to know each other, and maybe find even employment opportunities, even if you're looking just to get informational interviews with folks. I am in Veterati, if you want to look me up, and I am a mentor there as well, if you want to have a one-on-one without having it be recorded. Today's session is being recorded, just so you know. If you don't want to have your question recorded, let us know. We have a video editor who will cut that out. If you don't want to have that be part of our video that we post in social media, please let us know. Let's see. I think that's it. So let's jump in to the questions. So I know we talked about how you got to your current role. Could you give us an idea of what soft skills are essential to being successful in your current role?
Or you want to go first?
I'll go to Jaclyn then.
Yeah. So one of the key things, one of the key soft skills that I think is super important as a solution engineer is the ability to prioritize, right? So as a solution engineer, you're going to come across various opportunities or deals that you're partnering with your account executive to help progress them along and hopefully make them be a win. But along that progression, there's going to be other deals that you're working with other account execs, and there's various related activities. So the ability to really be able to manage your time and be able to prioritize what you're working on, I think is imperative when you're moving into this role. The second one that I'll touch on before I pass it over to Rebecca, since she's had a lot more experience as a solution engineer than me, I think is definitely your presence. So one of the things that really interested me into this type of role was the ability to hone skills around my executive presence. And every time I talked to a solution engineer, they were very confident. They always just had this great presence about them. They knew what they were talking about anytime they were in front of me. And I knew that I wanted to just build on that skill. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put myself into this type of role, because, presence is everything. And a lot of what we do is, we're presenting in front of our customers and really helping them understand the value that we can bring with our solutions.
Awesome. Thank you, Jaclyn. Rebecca, let me turn it over to you.
Sure. Yeah, 100% agree with Jaclyn on those. The two that I would add to that is just this, especially for solution engineer roles, to show up with a genuine curiosity. And that's both for what the customers and the prospects are going through, the genuine want to really understand what are their problems, how can you solve their problems, but also curiosity in the product you're working with. This is the second solution engineer role that I've had, or company that I've worked for doing it. And Slack in particular, it's wonderful, but it can also do so many different things. So you really want to dig in and learn about all these different things it can do. And it's not something that you just show up knowing. So the other thing I would say is really important with this role, and something that I struggle with a lot, but as I learn more and more, I do get better at it, is patience. I think a lot of people show up to a job and they just want to do well right off the bat and hit the ground running. But solution engineer jobs, as I've mentioned, along with the curiosity, it's a lot of learning. And everybody in those roles knows that. Every successful solution engineer knows that you're not going to start your job and be out the door running. So it's having patience with yourself and knowing that, coupled with that curiosity, you want to learn, you're there to learn, you're excited to learn, but you also know, and you don't beat yourself up, and you're not hard about, you're not going to know it today. It's going to come, and it's going to keep coming as you continue to grow in the role, whether that might be 2 years or 50 years down the road. You're always learning in a solution engineer role. And then I'll hand it to Frank.
Actually, let me twist the question a little bit to Frank, because he brings a lot of experience to the AE role. And so, Frank, is a sales background required to transition to the AE role when you had this background doing something else, and then you transitioned to sales?
Yeah.
Right? What was that like? How did you make that transition to go from a non-sales leadership role to a sales role?
So I look at it a little bit differently than most. And when I mentor people, I talk to them specifically about this too, because a lot of folks say the same thing. So I've never carried a bag. You hear that phrase a lot in sales, right? Never done this, I've never done that. And especially the folks that are coming out of the military, you're always selling. Like you may not realize you're selling, but you're always selling something to someone, whether it's to your lead petty officer, it's to your chief, and I'll keep it in the Coast Guard Navy vernacular because that's what I know. But if you're selling to your chief, your senior chief, your commander, your CO, you are always selling. So just because you don't do it formally and don't carry the bag doesn't mean that you're not honing in on those skills unconsciously, right? So I tell people don't dismiss what you have learned in the service, and also I think it can be done. There's a couple things that I think you need to have, as you were asking before. I think so my answer is, do you need a sales background? Not necessarily. It's helpful. There's no doubt it's helpful, because you get people who jump into the role and they'll read a sales book, and it's evident that you're forcing something that you shouldn't be forcing. Right? One of the pet peeves I hear in sales calls drives me crazy is when somebody asks a client, "What keeps you awake at night?" I'm like, "Stop! Don't do that, please, because just don't do it." It's not a good look. So, but the thing is, I think some of the skills that you need for the job, Jaclyn and Rebecca hit on a lot of them too. Communications is big, right? So you have to be able to communicate both orally and in writing, right? You have to be able to be professional, show up professional. You have to be a people person for this job. This is not a job for somebody who is not good with folks, right? One of my biggest, I guess, pointers would be obsess about your customers. Okay, so sales is one thing, right? Used car sales is another thing, and that's an old, bad example of a bad sales guy. I don't ever want to be referred to as that guy. Like I feel like I need a shower after I've talked with him. I'm genuine with my customers. I'm always genuine with my customers. The beauty of coming out of the military is you learn to speak frankly to people. You don't hold back. You don't candy coat. You tell it like it is. And I think that is super, super important for sales. The other thing is the organization skills. For me, I often struggle with this because there's a lot of balls in the air. I cover the entire Navy and the entire Marine Corps by myself. When I
Wow.
say myself, I mean I'm the only sales guy for that that big team. So I'm compared to, I think there's like 7 or 9 over on the Salesforce side that cover the name Marine Corps. So I have to stay organized, and I have to prioritize well. And then the most important thing that I would be a complete failure, fall on my face every day, is relying on my team. So Rebecca and Jaclyn are my extended team. They will keep me honest. They will give me the information I need. They will put me in my box and tell me that is not, we can't do that in this timeline. But then there are times, like we had one today. Jaclyn and I were on a call. I got a call late last night that we needed to have a very high level meeting today. It was all hands on deck. We dropped everything. We pulled in a variety of resources. We were cautioned, be careful, you're going to this unprepared. And I'm like, I got it. We got it. And Jaclyn and Rebecca and everybody pulled together, and it was amazing. It was a great effort, and the deal is moving in the right direction. So I hope that wasn't too long of an answer, but that's my contribution to that question.
Yeah, no, thanks, Frank. No, that's fantastic, and just really appreciate your insight. And I'm going to turn again another 45 degrees on the question and look at Rebecca and Jaclyn about as you transition to an SE role. If someone comes to this role without technical background, what resources and best practices will help that person be successful if they want to transition to the SE role?
Rebecca, did you want to start out, or?
Either way, I can. You want?
Sure.
Just for, I don't come from a strong technical background.
Right.
What's been really helpful for me is, part of it is the 2 companies that I have worked with, Teller Technologies and now Slack, have very strong onboarding. So at Slack, there's about a 2-month period where they put you through a lot of these softer technical skills that you need to know, which is mainly understanding Slack. So that helps. But some other things that you can do to prepare you for this role, one is, if at all possible, try to learn the product, or at least talk to people who use the product and learn as much about it as you can. Coming into an SE role or solutions engineer often is not how much technology do you know, can you write code? It's a lot of it, and that stuff won't hurt if you do know it, but it's more how fast can you learn the product, how much can you relate to the product, and how much can you take what you know and tell other clients and other prospects about it in a way that they can understand. So a lot of times, with Slack, you do talk to technical customers, but you also talk to people who are also not tech savvy. And so if you happen to want to be a solution engineer and you don't know a whole lot about technology, your stories that you tell these prospects might actually resonate with them more. So I would say focus on the product, focus on just learning how to tell the story of the product you're selling. The company is going to help you learn how to use it, but come knowing something about it. I would even say take some courses. Salesforce offers a lot of courses on how to use Salesforce. Slack has free accounts that you can have just to play around in there and talk to people that use it, get things from people that work there. And then the other thing is continuously learn in your role. So I've learned, at Slack, a lot of what we do centers around security. So I've made it a point to take extra trailheads on security, Google as much as I can about security, so that I can talk about it at the level with my customers or with our prospects. So, I'll hand this over to Jaclyn, but again, I would definitely say, don't let it, if it's something you might want to do, don't let it scare you off if you're not a coder or you don't know anything about security. But still, the best thing I can think of, you can just learn about the product, get as much speaking experience as you can, because you will be demoing. So as Jaclyn mentioned, the more presence that you can have and the more confident you can sound in what you're selling is great. And then, the technology will come as you go. You'll start learning it as you go. And Jaclyn?
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, just to add to what Rebecca said, well, let me start off with this. So I came from a technical background right before transitioning over to solution engineering, which is part of pre-sales. I was in a technical role as a solution architect, helping the Coast Guard implement their Salesforce solutions. And one of the things that I would mention in regards to, you know, how you acquire that technical expertise that can help, you know, especially transitioning from a non-technical role when I jumped into the Salesforce ecospace, is really using the resources that are available to you, right? I think Salesforce has been a huge champion in providing free learning, right? So if you're interested in becoming a solution engineer for Salesforce, you know, you can definitely go into Trailhead and really learn about the various products that we offer to our customers. So having transitioned from that background into Slack, where, you know, from a technical perspective, I didn't know too much about Slack. I used it as an end user within our company. So to add to what Rebecca said, a lot of what our conversations may center around when we are selling Slack to our customers do tend to be around security. So for me, I would say the onboarding that we've had has been amazing. I had, you know, 3 months to really go through a lot of continuous learning that Slack offered. But I'll say that, you know, just definitely use the people around you. If you're already within a space where you're moving from a different role internally, like I did, I would say that one of the biggest things that has helped me acquire the knowledge I need in order to be in front of our customers talking about Slack has really been using the power of my team and my peers. Rebecca was actually my onboarding buddy, and I hope she's not tired of all of my questions yet, but I always go back to using the help of people around me, right? I really act as a sponge, and when I see people that I know are experts in this field or with our product, you know, I would say it's helpful to just cling on to those people that can help you. And if you have the ability to find a mentor, I think that's huge. And being able to, you know, have someone that you can just really lean on, and having a safe space of, you know, having someone be able to answer questions that you may have. So yeah, that's what I have on my end.
Thank you, Jaclyn. Yeah, you know, fun fact, we use Slack internally at Salesforce in some of the projects that I worked in way before we even thought of acquiring Slack. And from a user perspective, it was great. You know, you download it, you install it, and you get familiar with it. I didn't pursue it as something that I was going to build my career on, but I can talk about what Slack is all about. And then we acquire the company. Of course, we have Trailhead now where we can learn Slack. So thank you for your insights there, because we do have a lot of free tools that are available online. You can self-paced learning, and also using the tool. I think I'm glad you guys brought this up, because that's very important for people to understand that you have the ability to learn about the tool nowadays, all of our platforms, specifically Slack, through Trailhead, and that's free learning. If you don't know about that, check out trailhead.salesforce.com. So we talked about the technical roles, we talked about the AE role, and some of the background knowledge that you would need to know. And Jaclyn, I think you did a really nice job of letting us know what's it like to work at Slack, right? What challenges do you commonly face in your roles? I think that's a really good question, right? And I'll go back up to Frank. Frank, you deal with quite a large client in the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps. Could you share some of the common challenges that you face as an AE?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is it's the industry that I work in. So public sector, Department of Defense. It's a bit of a challenge, right? It's different than commercial. There's nothing similar, I don't think. I mean, they're budgeting. You have to. I think it's important to understand how public sector, in my case, how the DoD, the Navy, and Marine Corps operate. So my background with the Coast Guard helped, because I understand budget processes. I understand fiscal year challenges and the things that are not necessarily a challenge in civilian land. So the government fiscal year ends September 30th every year. So October 1st starts a new year, and running up to that September 30th time frame is it's a race, right? You're trying to capture what little money is left. You're dealing with procurement shops that are closing down early because They're trying to spend all their money because, the government has to spend their money. They can't let any of it sit. It doesn't, they lose it, right? So it's a race, right? That's not the way it is in commercial world. I mean, they save their money and they spend it, differently. So that's a challenge, making sure that you understand your client, making sure that you understand those parameters. Because on October 1st, there's no money. And there's no money probably until January, February timeframe because of continuing resolution. So then you got to figure out what you're going to do during that time. And that's where you build your pipeline, right? That's where you're going out and you're still keeping your customers interested. You're still reaching out to your customers. You're still showing them the coolness of Slack and how it can make their lives completely transformed. And then always keep in the back of your mind that if they really want it bad enough, they'll find the money, even when there's no money. So there's ways for stakeholders to come forward. Another challenge, our internal challenges is at Slack, we're kind of new with the public sector business, right? So it's almost like a startup. So we're trying to educate internal staff that exactly what I just told you. This is not a commercial market. This is a public sector market. You have to respond differently. You have to respond quicker. Sometimes you don't hear things for weeks and months on end. Pack your patience, as my wife would say. It's one of those things where you have to be very patient with them because they will go dark on you. And it's not because they don't like you. It's not because they don't want to deal with you. They're busy. And if anybody knows anything about the DoD, they're wearing multiple hats all day, every day. Somebody was talking earlier about the E4 brigade, how you get stuff done when you really need to get stuff done. It doesn't necessarily fall under the guidelines in the regulations. I mean, these guys are running around, guys and gals are running around just making good things happen. They are fighting the fight and they are keeping us safe. So just make sure that you know that that's what's happening in the background. And I'm working to convince our commercial folks that came over from commercial and are now working in the public sector group how important some of this stuff is. It's been a bit of a challenge, but we're getting there. It's working out well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And Rebecca, could you share some of your challenges in your role as an SE?
Sure. So everything Frank said, but I think from an SE standpoint, something at Slack that's been a little bit more difficult than a couple of other places that I've been is this idea that Slack is, I think a lot of people have heard of Slack, they know what it is, but they know it as a messaging tool. It's a way where, if you're at a startup, you talk to each other on Slack, or if you want to talk outside of Microsoft to your friends and you don't want your company to know, you're going to talk on Slack. They don't necessarily know Slack as this rich collaboration tool that it is. It can integrate all of their communications, and it fundamentally changes the way that an organization, especially a large organization, can communicate. So one of the challenges is, as a solution engineer, you want to be able to showcase this value, but it is a completely new concept to a lot of people. And so it's getting them to understand this isn't just a platform where you can talk to each other. This is a platform where you can get all of this stuff done. It's something like they haven't seen before. So you have to find that fine line, and it's sometimes very challenging. If you just throw Slack at them, or especially our enterprise tool, it's not going to make any sense because it's not the way they think about it right now. And your brain doesn't just switch like that. So you really have to find a way to, definitely listen to them, understand what their problems are, but then show them the solution in a way that, on the one hand, is similar enough to what they do that they're able to relate it, but at the same time, showing them what it's going to solve. And it's been really fun seeing people transition over to Slack and learning that, but it is a challenge that it is change management, and it's getting people to look at a solution in a way that they haven't before. Almost like this probably gets run into the ground, Frank, like some of the sayings that you don't like, but it's the same thing as when, people, who was it, Henry Ford, that said, if I'd have sold a horse and carriage or whatever that saying is, people would have bought that. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so for me, that's one of the bigger challenges, is getting people to think outside of the box that aren't normally accustomed to that.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm gonna twist the question for you, Jaclyn, because I think Iris posted a really good question in the chat. I've been with the Salesforce platform for a long time. 2004 was when I was first introduced. I became what do you call the accidental admin at a company I worked at, and since then, since 2004, I've been in front of the Salesforce platform. And so for me, it was a little bit of a shock to go from Chatter to Slack. And I know we don't have 4 hours in this call, but Iris wanted to know, how do we understand the full capabilities of Slack? How does Slack differentiate itself from something like Chatter or other chat tools? I know Slack is an acronym, and maybe we can take it from there, Jaclyn. If you can summarize all what I just asked in maybe a few sentences, that would be great.
I'd love to. It's something that's come up a lot with recent discussions with, some opportunities that I'm working on with customers who are Salesforce customers, and they're really wanting to know, how is Slack so different from Chatter? So I'll start with that question, what's the differentiator between Slack and Chatter? I want to preface this by saying that within the Salesforce platform, Chatter it's a feature, it's a tool within that platform, right? That allows you to communicate and collaborate with your counterparts. But one of the key differences is that any of the information, right, that you're sharing within the Salesforce platform, any changes you're tracking on the different things that you may be working in within Salesforce, right? Like your contacts or opportunities, accounts that you're working on. All of that information is contained within Salesforce, and it's available to only people who have access to Salesforce, right? When we're looking at something like Slack, Slack is its own platform, its own collaboration tool, and it encompasses all of the communication that you can have across your entire organization. So going back to something that Rebecca mentioned is we're really looking at transforming the way people work with each other, right? And really simplifying a lot of these internal processes that different groups within an organization have. So I don't like to, comparing Chatter and Slack side by side, I would just say it's not something that we like to do, only because, again, Chatter is a tool within the Salesforce platform, whereas Slack, it's really a system of engagement where we're bringing all of the people across your organization and all of the tools that you may be using on a day-to-day, such as Salesforce, such as Zoom, such as Google or Outlook Calendar. We're bringing all of those tools into this place where you're able to easily communicate with the people you're working with, ask questions, network, find subject matter experts, while also bringing in the tools that you're using. Maybe, if you're a manager and there's approval requests that you're looking at on a day-to-day basis, and rather than you having to switch over into that specific system, right? Like Workday for any PTO requests or any deals that need discounting, you're not having to switch into those separate applications, but you're really staying within Slack where you're able to have all of that in one view. And the second question, and can you repeat the second question?
Yeah, no, I think that was it. It was more so we don't obviously we don't want to go on a feature by feature. This is a non-technical set of engagements. It was more so to give people, I think Iris wanted to know what the perspective is. For somebody like me, I found it very powerful in that I have different groups that I talk, just in communication, not just internal of Salesforce. I also mentor in 2 different groups. And so we have outside groups within the Slack. You can go to a different channel and you're talking to a completely set of people all within this secure platform. To me, that's so powerful. And then of course, to your point, I want to take time off, or I need IT help. There's workflows within Slack. And again, I don't want to geek out because I could for the next 2 hours. I love Slack and I've become a proponent of it. But I think it was more so, and Iris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, just wanted to see what was the differentiator between the 2 platforms. And I think Jaclyn did a phenomenal job in describing the new hotness that is Slack within our platform.
I think one of the things that's really a selling point is that it's the single pane of glass on most things. So you integrate all those apps into Slack and everything is right there. You stop this popping in and out of applications to get your daily job done. Because if anybody's like me and suffer from ADD from all this screen time that I'm on, as soon as I get in my inbox, I'm stuck. It's like a sinkhole. I get in there and I can't get out of it, and that's what everybody's complaining about. So you just link your Outlook or your mail to Slack, and it pops up throughout the course of your day, and you can deal with it or not, right? You can just that's a big selling point for the customers, I think, is to get that single pane of glass going.
Yeah, and that's fantastic to hear. I'm Service Cloud, subject matter expert, and yeah, I love efficiency, and Slack has definitely brought that in. And maybe we can pivot a little bit and find out, I don't know who to direct this question to, but what are some of the changes that you have seen since implemented in Slack since it was acquired by Salesforce that you might be able to cover here?
Who's that to?
Any of the three.
So I was here for the transition.
Okay.
I don't know if Rebecca, were you here during that transition, or did you come after the transition?
I was here during, but I did notice there was some raised hands too.
I didn't know that as well. Iris had some raised hands, and somebody else.
I had a raised hand just really quickly go back to. I remember what you mentioned, Elio, what Slack stands for, right? It's an acronym. It's a searchable log of all communication and knowledge. I just wanted to touch on that really quickly because
Sure.
From within my own experience, right, as I was looking to transition into a totally different role, I was in post-sales on the delivery side. I wanted to move over to pre-sales. Internally within Salesforce and us using Slack, I was just able to find people, solution engineering managers, and just really network across the entire company before applying to this specific role. And I kid you not, I talked to 10 managers and several solution engineers because I really wanted to make sure that this was a role that was a good fit for me and where I'd be able to bring value to our teams as well. But then within the solution engineering role as well, as I've transitioned into doing customer calls, discovery calls, or preparing for demonstrations, or helping Frank, responding to RFIs or other various activities, I'm able to just search across our entire Slack workspaces, right? And be able to find very valuable information that helps me do my own job. So just wanted to touch on that. That was why I raised my hand.
Thank you, Jaclyn. No, that was awesome. I think everybody responded well with that. I feel like I'm asking all the questions, and I want to give people an opportunity to ask. Somebody's talking about I love BlockKit. Iris?
Thank you, Elio. I really appreciate you putting my question in a far better way than I had actually stated it. And thank you for the answers. You've really given me the idea that I've only barely scratched the surface with Slack. So if you're like us, like military trailblazers, a bunch of new people in Salesforce, some of us have our own jobs and we're using Slack on the side, what are one of three, we've only got a few minutes left. What's one possible capability that you could give us to maybe integrate into what we do to give us a little bit of an idea of what are some of those capabilities to ignite our passion, to say the least?
I'll jump over to Rebecca. Do you mind answering that one?
Yeah. So Iris, are you talking about maybe that you can do right out of the box with the free version of Slack? Just to
yeah, I'm sorry, we're still working it out.
Yeah, so just I'm trying to think of my favorite my favorite feature that you could use, just especially from the free version. I would say something that really helps. One of the things that really helps, and then I'll popcorn this over to Frank or Jaclyn to add too if they want to, but even just the ability to share emojis helps your communication go so much faster. For example, like Frank sent me something that he needed, and we were looking at an RFI, and I was able to put eyes on it right away, and so was Jaclyn. So we didn't have to have a big conversation over who's going to take care of this, who's going to work on it. Bam, he knew we had seen it. We put one emoji. Same with the check mark emoji. I have a colleague that sometimes asks me to follow up on things, and once I've done it, I can just put the check mark. I don't have to send an email. I don't have to explain anything. Okay, bam, that's done. So it's just making communication so much faster that I think would really help.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's funny because when I got the job with Slack after I came out of retirement, Slack is a younger person's tool, right? So you can see the gray. I'm not a younger person anymore, right? It's interesting because my kids are older, like my kids are in their 30s. So when I told them I got a job with Slack, they're like, "You did what? You're working for who?" And I'm like, yeah. I know it's funny. And they're like, "Dad, do you even know what this is?" I go, "Well, I'm learning. But by the way, I speak in emojis now." And they just cracked up laughing because it's true. It's like I got into my introduction to the team. I mean, I'm looking at this thing. It's just peppered with emojis about everything from Microsoft, where I came from, to the Coast Guard, and it's cool, it's fun, but like Rebecca said, I sent an RFI over to them in a DM, which is a direct message to them. I say, "Can you guys, give me some input on this, please?" Both of them, 2 eyes came up right away. I'm done. I'm on to something else. So it was very, very cool. And so I think that's important. I also think that the single pane of glass is important to me as well as my customers. So I love where we can take those integrations with applications that we use on a regular basis and bring them into Slack, so I don't have to keep popping in and out of things. So that's super helpful for me. And I'll popcorn over to Jaclyn to see if she's got anything she wants to add to that.
Yeah, I and Iris, I don't know if you've played a lot around just our search feature. If you've become familiar with, really understanding how you can easily find what you're looking for. I think, when I think about one of the key benefits that Slack provides to our customers within the public sector is the ability to just search across this repository that they're going to be able to organically build, right? And whenever you have these various teams that begin using Slack, and they're sharing information, they're sharing documents from other systems that other people may not have access to, it just becomes very powerful, right, for the people using it. So I would just say, for those of you who don't know how powerful our search engine is within Slack, I would definitely get acquainted with the various filters that you can use. Even, one of the things that sticks out is also just being able to search across your directory, right? Like find different people within your workspaces. Depending on how Slack is set up within each organization, you're able to find, other people within the organization or company that you're working with, and be able to connect with them as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Jaclyn. Priscilla, I think you had a question. I saw your hand was up. You can come off mute.
I have a question and a comment.
Sure.
Well, first of all, thank you all, Jaclyn, Frank, and Rebecca, for being with us this evening. Going to what Frank said, I'm going to age myself here, but my 17-year-old and 19-year-old use Slack. They work at Chick-fil-A and they use Slack. That's the first time I've heard of Slack. Before, I was studying for my initial Salesforce admin exam and stuff like that. And I told my kids about it, and I was like, "Help me understand this." And so, yeah, my high school and college student taught me about Slack to understand how to use it when the first time I approached it with hiring our heroes. So my question to that is Slack thinking about somehow emerging or approaching the education field for secondary education? I think that would be really interesting, because they are using it with some employers now, like Chick-fil-A hires a lot of teens, and they're getting their first approach to this wonderful platform.
So that's a great question. And with the stand up of the public sector business in Slack, we have within the public sector business, we have state, local government, and education. So not only do we have resources applied to the education vertical, but we also have really amazing prices for education. The discounting is ridiculous to the point where it's basically free for education, almost free. So there's a target market out there for education, because we want to put these tools in their hands. This is a young person's game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I knew nothing about Slack when I came to work for Slack. I came to work for Slack because I'm a sales guy, and I've been a sales guy in an IT industry for a long time, right? And I had a background in the military. I speak Navy, I speak Marine Corps, and so they're like, we want you to run this business. So I walked in the door, much like you just said, Priscilla, knowing very little about Slack, and that's why it was such a joke in my house. They're like, Dad, come on, seriously, you could not. I'm like, I'm speaking emojis, get over it. So so we are looking at it, and we are actively targeting that market so that we can, I think it's a good strategy too, honestly. I mean, if you for me, from the Navy business, I want to get this in the hands of the cadets and the young people coming in, the ingress to the Navy and the Marine Corps, the Naval Academy, officer candidate school. Love to get it in out west in the Naval War College, where so these are the future leaders of the Navy. So if I can put these tools in their hands early enough, they will become the new directors of IT or PEO Digital or somewhere down the road, and they're gonna like, we're not doing anything without Slack, that kind of thing. So that's my mentality from a long-term perspective for sales, is to try to get it into their hands as early as possible in their careers so that they become our warriors.
If you don't mind, I would love to talk to you more about that offline. I'm a transitioning teacher, so like the fact that you guys are introducing that to our secondary students and post-secondary, whether it's Navy War College or our West Point cadets, like I just think that's absolutely amazing, and introducing them to IT early without it sounding so scary, you know? So I would love to continue that conversation.
We connect, sure.
Yeah, definitely. I did put Frank, Rebecca's, and Jaclyn's LinkedIn profile link on the chat, and we'll make sure to have that also on our social media channels. Before, I know we're just over the hour, so before we close, I'd like to thank personally Frank, Jaclyn, and Rebecca for co-hosting tonight's session. It's been an incredible session. I can't believe that hour, it just flew. Thank you so much for giving us your perspectives on the topics that we discussed. Any last words you'd like to say before we close out our session to all three of you?
I would just like to say thank you to everybody who attended and listened, and I hope it wasn't boring, and I hope it was something that you took something away from. And as Ilio said, if you want to reach out and connect, please feel free to do so. I'd be more than happy to connect with you and share what knowledge I have with you, and hopefully, this was helpful for you. And I'm looking forward to, talking to you in the future. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Frank.
I'd like to echo what Frank said. Just thank you all for having us here. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If I could help anyone here with any other questions that you may have. I know we're at the top of the hour, so definitely connect with me, and I'd be happy to help in any way I can.
Right.
Same. Thank you all so much for giving us this time. And just like to echo Jaclyn and Frank, if there's anything I can help with, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you, all three of you. Everybody, just remember, we're going to be on hiatus for 2 weeks. You'll see the messages on social media. So there will be no session for the next 2 Wednesdays. We're going to take a little summer break, and then we'll be back with an amazing set of guest hosts. Again, thank you, and have a wonderful evening.